Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be tackling a topic that's so important for creating a world where everyone feels like they belong, and that's the idea of building community. And we're looking at it through a kind of unique lens today, right?
We are.
This idea of a simple equation, A plus B equals C.
Yeah, and it's interesting how something that sounds like it belongs, on an elementary school chalkboard can actually reveal so much about building these inclusive communities.
Absolutely, and that's what we're diving into today. So what is the story behind A plus B equals C?
So when we break it down, it really boils down to two fundamental elements, and that's access and belonging.
Okay, wait a minute. Time out.
Hey, Simon.
Yeah, hey, Megan. What's going on here? I thought you and I were hosting this podcast episode. Who are these people?
I have no idea who they are. So this was created through Notebook LM, and it's an AI tool through Google for virtual note taking. You can give Notebook LM your notes. And in my case, I just copied a bunch of stuff from the OCALI website, literally just copy and pasted it. And then it finds relevant information and you can convert it into a podcast. And what was really interesting was our two keynotes from OCALICon this year were all about how to incorporate AI into education.
So you just typed something in and then it spit out like this AI Megan and this AI Simon. And
Yep.
Okay.
I was baffled.
Okay. So what are we even doing here? I guess we're done, right? We don't need to host this.
No, we do not. No.
All right. Well, it's good talking to you.
Don't go yet.
Oh.
So while I think it was a really fun experiment, I like anything with AI, you have to take it with a grain of salt. So, they couldn't even get our name right for OCALI.
Now, it's interesting because we have an organization called OCALI.
OCALI. Yep. You're right. AI always has a problem with OCALI. We do a lot of auto-generated captions. Almost always it's OCALI, OAKALLEY. So yeah, we usually have to go in and correct those transcripts when we do that. So AI, pretty good, but it misses a lot of things.
Yep, I would agree. And so just for kicks, we thought we'd give it one more shot with the introduction of this episode's guest.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into the life and work of Jim Taylor today.
All right, sounds good.
Should be pretty fascinating, especially given the stuff we found in this excerpt from his biography.
I know. It's amazing, right? Like, just to kick things off, thinking about how his journey began, we're talking 1978, way back when, volunteering at a school for autistic students. Most people weren't even really talking about autism back then. And he's already dedicating his time, over 40 years in the field now. That's dedication. That
is so wild, that experience. Just starting there has to have shaped everything, right?
Absolutely. You can see that in how his career developed, too.
Totally. He started as a teacher, then becomes head, sent all the way up to director of education.
Okay. All right. Thank you, AI. But I think we're going to jump back in here. Megan, I think you and I should take over for the rest of this episode. I agree. Yep. Okay. That sounds good. So we did recently sit down with our good friend, Jim Taylor. Okay. You want to get started?
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure.
And I can tell from the sound of your voice, you're not from around here.
I'm not from around here. I'm from downtown Columbus.
Okay. You did come right up.
Yeah.
At least for the next few days or so.
Yeah. No, I'm from Glasgow in Scotland.
Yeah.
Finest city in the universe.
It's the finest city.
The finest city in the universe.
Okay. Yeah. I've never been there.
Well,
sell me on it.
Tell you about Glasgow. Well, Glasgow did a very clever thing historically. They invented something called Edinburgh, which filtered all the tourists into Edinburgh and left us alone.
So Jim Taylor, he has a lot of experience in the field of autism, and he has either attended or presented at our annual conference going back to 2007. And the past 2 years, he has come back to Columbus to join us for a virtual conference. Let's start there. Why are you here?
Why am I here
this week?
I was approached. I was doing World Autism Conference in South Africa in 2006.
In 2006?
2006.
Okay. Almost 20 years ago.
Almost 20 years ago. And I was approached My very pleasant young woman called Jill Hudson, who said, "That was lovely. Would you like to do that in America next year?" And I thought she was a scam artist. So I said, yes, of course I'll come to America. And we came out in 2007.
Yep.
And at that point, I had been a bit frustrated with large conferences, partly to do with the language across Europe and partly to do with the level of thinking. So when I came to OCALI, I was blown away by not just the thinking, but how it was presented. And I felt that I learned a great deal from that. So we came...
You came to our very first conference.
I did,
in 2007.
Yes. Yeah. And I decided then to return. And apart from missing a couple of years, 2011 and 12, I think, I've been at every one. So the question was, why am I here? When OCALI went online...
2020, we went online. Yeah.
When was it, sorry?
2020.
2020.
Pandemic.
And I changed my time zone back home in Glasgow, and that worked really well, apart from no one told the sun that it had to rise and fall.
Wait, you have sun?
Yeah. And I enjoyed that. In 2021, I found myself programming other things, so I wasn't getting as much out of it. And in 2022, I found myself doing a full day's work and then sitting through the conference. And I realised that from my style of learning, being somewhere, and OCALI was always where I came to learn and think and interact and communicate with no outside interferences.
Yeah.
So I decided last year that I would made the incredible decision just to travel to a conference that didn't exist. And I was the only...
Yes, a virtual conference.
You people were very kind to me. None of you laughed in front of me. But I found last year that I was reading more, I was watching more, I was thinking more, I was talking to people. And OCALI had always been, for me, the end of a period, and it gave me new thinking to go on to the next year. And there's usually an OCALI moment when I think, oh, I'll do a presentation on that next year. So I think it's just about learning style.
Yeah.
So Jim Taylor is talking about learning styles, and it's something we talk a lot about here at OCALI, and within our center, we talk about learning styles all the time. And we do so much professional development and training that we are just, really hyper-focused on it. And, what are those best strategies and practices for adult learners? And for Jim, he understands that he learns best when he is in this environment, when he is in Columbus for OCALICon. Again, he's from Scotland. Like, he comes to Columbus for OCALICon.
We don't pay him for this. This is all he's out of pocket. He's doing this on his own.
I mean, it's a virtual conference, and you can literally attend and participate anywhere in the world, and people do. But he is more engaged in the conference. He's more reflective, and he chooses to be in Columbus, again, from Scotland.
It's a really interesting story. And I guess I should take a step back and clarify that for many years, we were an in-person conference. With the pandemic, we kind of switched to a virtual format, and we've kind of stuck with it since then. But Columbus continues to be our home city. I mean, our main offices are here in Columbus. Even though we do a lot of work online, we have people all over the state. We have colleagues out of state who work for OCALI, but our main offices are here. And so Jim, came here for many years for that in-person conference. He wasn't just participating in the conference itself, but he was actually becoming part of the broader Columbus community. And you've really found community here, is what it sounds
Absolutely.
Like.
I think that's the part of it. That's what I was missing. There was a real community here, and I was speaking to Megan earlier about meeting people over a coffee and meeting families and, the range of professors and academics and 12-year-old kids walking around and so on. I just loved that whole thing about walking around the hall and speaking to people and sharing.
Yeah.
And I like Columbus, and I like being here and learning. So after last year, I decided to do it again. And here I am. And I think culturally, this is probably a dreadful thing to say, or an incorrect thing to say, but culturally,
It's a safe spot.
that openness to collaborate and share views is something I always found in OCALI. Yes, that I tended not to find anywhere else.
Really?
When I've collaborated in other places which shall remain nameless, it's been a bit of an ego tussle in many ways, but people have an openness. But I was always taken with Sean saying conversation is the currency of change.
Sean Henry, our director.
Yeah, Sean Henry. And that was an OCALI moment for me, and I thought that's where it happens. That's where change happens.
That's where change happens. And so Jim Taylor, 40-plus year career, if there's anyone who can speak about change in our knowledge in autism, in the strategies and supports that we're using, Megan, you had a chance to ask him to reflect on that.
Absolutely. And why wouldn't I with that much history?
I'm just curious because I'm 20 years into the field and you're 40 years into the field, right?
I wouldn't correct you and say 45 actually, but that's another matter.
Longer.
And I'm counting, yeah.
I've seen a lot of change just in 20 years. Like, what's the biggest change you've seen in 45?
That's a really good question because it struck me recently that when I started teaching children with autism, I was a primary school teacher, and I was invited to go and work in a school specifically for children with autism. A good friend of mine, Adam Feinstein, who wrote a book called The History of Autism, tells me it was the third school in the world for children with autism.
Oh, wow.
And in those days, in 1979, it was not, children did not have a legal right to education. And there was an act passed in 1981 that said all children can be educable. All children can be educated. And it floors me to think that when I started teaching, there were some children deemed to be ineducable. And that's unimaginable just now.
Right.
But I think the other thing that's changed was that when I started teaching, my proud boast was at one point I had read every book that had ever been written in autism, all one of them. And we didn't know what we were doing. And most of the children were coming from hospital placement, which again is unimaginable. But the children coming to our school were coming from hospital placement. And at that point, I was going to meet and assess children who were in large wards in hospitals.
Wow.
But I think we got to that stage where we started to see what worked, and we started to see that these were not just children with delayed development or whatever. I think we know what works, and I think we know the answers. I think the problem is quite often getting the resources. I remember discussions about buildings not being, people couldn't get permission to build a building without wheelchair access, which is unthinkable. So no one argues about ramps and lifts and whatever. I don't think we've made the argument that what's needed for children. So I think what's changed is the understanding and the knowledge. We know what works. In fact, we're pretty certain we know what works. I liken it to soccer. I'll say football. And it's almost like we know how to win every game, but we don't have the players or the quality of players to win it. One OCALI moment I had was that I paid all this money and spent all this time to come over here, and I had my OCALI moment in the first sentence that he said in the introduction to the conference. He said, we're here to, what is it that we need to rethink? And I thought that encapsulated, I don't think there's anything I need to rethink, but I'm here to see if there's anything I need to rethink.
Oh, I love that. 45 plus year career, and he still has the curiosity, the humility, and the openness to ask, what do I need to rethink?
Oh, I so agree, Megan. And Jim always talks about that OCALI-Con moment where he sort of takes a step back and he kind of looks at things, even after 40 plus years. But he looks at things with a fresh or different perspective. And I think that's a good strategy for any of us, right? No matter what our field or profession is. And it doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you've been in the game for a long time. It's an incredibly humbling and empowering question. What do I need to rethink? And speaking of games, I'm really glad that Jim mentioned soccer or football there, because we kind of rounded out our time with him and talking about how this A plus B equals C ethos is extant in some of the clubs that Jim has worked with in the UK, and how they continue to grow and strengthen their communities by building a more inclusive experience.
I've been involved with Glasgow Celtic Football Club, and I think what they do, they have
What do they do? Do they have like designated areas or
they
quiet zones?
They do a number of different things, Simon. The interesting thing, the club was formed in 1888, which was just after you were born.
It was,
sure, yeah. 1888 was a number before 1979, Megan.
Yes, I'm aware. Thank you.
I'll send you a calculator over. And the statement was made that a football club will be created in the East End of Glasgow to address inequality and poverty, and to put food on the tables of families and so on. And they have a statement that says Celtic Football Club is a club for all. And that's not necessarily the case with every football club. So they attempt to bring everything in. And I became involved when they realised that a number of autistic supporters and their families weren't able to get in. So they do a variety of different things. They have a sensory room where kids can go in and watch the whole things. I worked with a young man who now goes to the match on his own, and he had been taught to arrive first and have a seat at the very back of the stadium so you could watch people coming in. You could grow as the noise grew. They had a social story for what might happen in a match, and the definites and the variables and all sorts of different things.
Oh, I love that.
And they have the most incredible team of coaches who just accept this young man wants to go to a football match. There are 65 to 70,000 people here. What will it take to get him in there?
Wow.
So that whole philosophy of making it accessible to people and dealing with inequality. I believe a club called Oldham do it in England. Carlisle United, I'm just learning about. Wrexham have promoted what they've done because of Ryan and whatever. And I think the superstar striker goal scorer has a child with autism, I believe, and they're doing incredibly well. Wrexham is a relatively smallish city in Wales, but I think that development of a community is really, really important. So the football club becomes integral to the whole society. Thinking about OCALI's A plus B equals C, the whole community thing. There are examples out there of where they're doing it exceptionally well.
So that was Jim Taylor, OCALI's good friend and partner, chatting with Simon and I while he was actually in town for our last OCALICon. Just cannot believe that he comes in person. You can learn about him at jimtaylorknowsautism.com. He has a great website. He did mention his work with Celtic FC. You can read all about their efforts to make live football or soccer experience as inclusive and accessible as possible for all fans.
Yeah, and we'll post that. It's a kind of lengthy URL, but we'll post that link where they really list all the different ways that they're making a more accessible experience for their fan base. So it's really great to see more and more teams and clubs and facilities being thoughtful and intentional in the ways that they reach out to their broader community and really make sure that they're involving everyone in the community, giving everyone a chance to participate. So we do want to just say thanks again to Jim Taylor for helping us to connect the dots on this topic and so many others. It was, as always, a delight and a treat. Thank you, Jim, and we hope to see you again soon.
You've been listening to Connecting the Dots podcast series from the Autism Center at OCALI. You can find all of OCALI's podcast episodes at ocali.org/podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And you can learn more about the Autism Center at OCALI at ocali.org/center/autism. I'm Megan Turbridge.
And I'm Simon Buer. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you soon.